Oh, snap. It's time to yap. And I'm your host, Big C, and welcome to another episode of Just Yapping. Today's episode, we're going to take a different turn. I know these past couple of weeks, there have been some horrible, traumatic events that happened, one in DC and the other one in Philadelphia. So I want to express my condolences to all the families and the uh, teammates and the friends of the lost ones um, in both accidents. And my heart goes out to also the first responders who had to see those horrific events. And that's one thing I actually wanted to touch on. Um, Me being a former first responder, about 11 and a half, 12 years, I was a volunteer fireman slash EMT. We had a pretty busy department being volunteers because I know there's that volunteer and career war that always happens. But regardless of being career or volunteer, you're probably going to come off to see the same or obviously more horrific things in your careers in your life. So I commend you for standing strong, EMS personnel and police as well. I know every call is not the same. You're going to go and you're going to see things that you're like, what the F is going on? But, that's something that you signed up for. There's only a few that can actually do that type of job. You have to have a certain courage. You have to have guts to do that stuff, especially when things are getting hectic. You have people running out of burning buildings to save themselves, but then you have people, with fire department and people like myself from back in the day are running in to go save people and put the fire out, right? And unfortunately, in all those chaotic events that happen, we, whether the family members or people from the public and stuff like that lose their lives, and it's traumatic for them as well. But to actually witness it, or actually be a part of it and go through with the recovery or go through with a rescue, it still has a daunting effect on someone, right? Uh, they used to, well, they still do consider first responders as superheroes and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, for some who have families, they go home to their families and they hug their loved ones because of what they just saw. So I can only imagine, the chaotic scenes and what was going through the minds of the first responders in both events. Unfortunately, there are going to be more in their careers, and it's something that they have to cope with. Some can cope with seeing loss of life better than others. And I am not here to compare. This is not a comparison game. This is just something, I'm a storyteller. So I'm going to tell you things that I went through as a volunteer firefighter EMT, and things that I saw. Was it traumatic for me? Yes, it was. Do I think about it? Uh, Sometimes, when I think it's appropriate to just sit and, and think about those things. But I always wonder, I always have the family in back of my head wondering, like, what are they thinking, still till today. And a lot of those things happened a number of years ago. Um, I'll tell you one tragic story that stands out in my mind. Um, we had a young man who was a trainee for corrections. He was actually going home. He lived about an hour away on his motorcycle. So whenever emergency personnel get a dispatch of a motor vehicle accident or anything like that, we're out of the door pretty quick. But when it comes time for a motorcycle, it's a little different because it's two wheels, and you don't know the severity of what you're about to see. So you kind of like put the pedal to the metal, if you know what I'm saying. So we get the call, and there is a section of this highway. There's like a roller coaster. It's called a whoop-de-doo, right? So it comes the gentleman when there was an eyewitness that was going northbound on his little stretch of highway roadway, and he was going south. The witness said that the young man went up over the hump, and that brought him to like almost levitate a little bit onto the top portion of his seat, gas tank type of his motorcycle, and he lost control. And he lost control. He slid underneath the guardrail. So we get there, and I was the commanding officer at the time. And when we get there, and I love my cops. They're fantastic people. They do a great job. But I did see, like, and I'm sorry if I'm graphic or if I'm just telling you what I saw. There was literally a pool of blood in the roadway, and like they're just still waving on traffic while the cars are like, so I'm like, hell no. I'm like, get the truck and just block off the whole road. We'll argue with these guys. It doesn't matter, because I thought it was, you don't do that. So anyway, I see a young man face down, probably about 20 yards away from the actual motorcycle. And I remember running over to him. And when you're especially first responders, you know what I'm talking about. When you're running, everything is in slow motion because your blood is going to your brain, and it's going to the most parts of your body where you're gonna have to use your hands and your muscles and your legs and stuff to really get stuff. And it's like when you're like, if you're at a beach all day and you're drained, that's the kind of thing that happens. It's that adrenaline pump, and then at the end you're like, I'm exhausted. Everything is played in slow motion, and I remember the paramedic, a good friend of mine, since he was face down, we get aboard and we roll him over. And at the time, it dawned on me that his leg wasn't there. And I was like, holy, his leg's not there. And the medic was like, no kidding. It's so the other firefighter, EMT guys had grabbed it and put it in a bag. So I recall saying, hey, listen, we're going to do what we can to get you to the hospital ASAP. I knew you're hurt super bad. We're going to do the best we can to really get this. So at the time, since I was in charge, I wanted to find out who was driving the ambulance. And I was like, who's on the ambulance? Who's driving? The gentleman said, I am. I said, no, you're not. Get out. I'm driving. Because I wanted to get this kid there so fast. And I'm not trying to make a joke out of it. It was just because I know the public, they always want to lend a hand. And that's so awesome that everybody wants to come in a time of desperation to help, which is probably the best thing, right? To have people come help. But at that time, he was interfering, and I kind of didn't know who he was. And I remember him coming up to me, and he's like, hey, you need to put that leg in ice. And I was like, what? I was like, who that for you? I was like, what do you think this is, an ice cream truck? I don't carry ice. And I told him, get out of here. To find out later on, he was like some surgeon, down in New York City. But regardless, like, you don't get involved. This isn't your scene. So fast forward, the hospital was about 6.5 minutes away. And I think we got there like literally lightning speed. Unfortunately, the young man bled out, and we tried to do our best. And that was the kind of the hardest part, because in my volunteer career, there were a few incidents where I, being in charge at the time, had to send emails to the loved ones of those that, unfortunately didn't make it. And, to let them know that, hey, under our care at the time of our rescue recovery, they were in good hands. And we treated them with respect, and we did the best we could. And we're sending our condolences. There were counselors that came to see us that day and that night and that week, and to make sure that we were all okay. But it takes a certain type of strength and mental strength, and that thing. Even though there were a couple of guys who rode motorcycles that day in the firehouse, didn't ride that day. They actually just said, you know what, I'll walk, or I'll have my loved one come pick me up, which they did. And then it just, you kind of leave that on the back burner, and you don't talk about it again, because the only people that talk about it are those that were there. So for your first responders out there, the veterans and stuff, it's kind of, yes, it's very hurtful, especially when you lose your own. That's a different story. That's something totally different. But when you've come on scene and you've actually lost somebody that's in your care or something like that, it's gonna, it's gonna hurt. But if it continues to hurt, you won't be able to do your job properly, right? You're gonna be like, oh, this one hurt, and then the next one could be worse or minor. It all depends. Remember, every time that alarm sounds, it's not the same. It's different incidents, different people, different, everything is totally different. So you have to prepare. That's where your training kicks in, right? Everybody trains, everybody does the best they can. You can only do the best you can on certain calls, right? Because some are obvious. Like, I've been on calls where unfortunately the person is already deceased, and there's nothing you can do. It's sad. There's nothing you can do, but you still have to get them out of that motor vehicle. You can't leave the person in there. So unfortunately, you have to go and you have to use tools and cutting tools and stuff to get the person out. Very strenuous. Takes time. While you have family members coming to visit the crash scene, and they're screaming and yelling. It's heart-wrenching. It really is. I would hate for anyone who is not prepared for something like that in that type of career, fire department, EMS, or even police, to see or hear something like that. It's just heart-wrenching, especially when you have your own family, or just in general, you're human, right? You're going to hear, you're going to see it, you're going to be like, man, what the F? And the only people that really relate are the people that were there, right? Because you can't just go up to some normal stranger and be like, hey, guess what I saw today? They're not going to understand. The only people that understand are those who are first responders or those that were actually there. So there were other motor vehicle accidents that I'd come across, especially when they deal with children. We had a young lady who was 8 months pregnant that had she had a belly. She was driving a small compact car. She had her mother was sitting in the in the passenger seat. And then she had three. The kids must have ranged from like 3 years old to maybe 6. There were 3 kids in the back seat. And at the time, there were really no car seat like protocols and all that other stuff. They were just strapped in the back and just hanging out, playing around. The lady got on the highway, on the on-ramp, and she ran out of gas. And the person that was coming up over the hill down didn't see her. He saw her in the right lane, but she wasn't going because her car ran out of gas. So he slammed into the car, and thank God that no one was seriously injured. Even the kids that were in the back seat, they ended up in the front with the mom and the grandmother. They weren't seriously hurt. They had some injuries, but none life-threatening. The mom, who was 8 months pregnant, she did have some belly discomfort because of the steering wheel and the seatbelt, but she was okay. So they also, but whenever you hear an alarm and it deals with children and stuff like that, I think that mentality, that thing in your mind switches, like, holy crap, we got to get there like right now. And not just, it goes for anybody whenever the key is saving lives, period. But I mean, when it comes to children, that tempo, right, is a little different. So I don't want to sit here and tell you this and that. I'm a storyteller. This is what my podcast is about. I know those of you that are watching, my fans out there, some of you that are first responders, know what I'm talking about. And even those who are eyewitnesses to certain things, it's still traumatic. But the difference is, and I'm not being disrespectful, I mean that you're an eyewitness to what happened or what went on around you. But to actually go and save the people who are going through it or went through it, that's a different monster. That's where you're trained and you do different things. So like I can't imagine the families that were just hanging out and eating. Or I seen the video of the old man that was with his wife. They were at a diner and stuff, and a piece of projectile flew through the thing and knocked his hat off. And I was talking about it today at work. What if the projectile hit him lower or hit him here? It would have been a different story for this guy. But those that were standing around, some of them were not so lucky, and some are still unfortunately in the hospital recovering in critical condition. So my thoughts and prayers are out to them and their families, because I heard the mayor of Philadelphia talk about it today, that are some still critical, and just the whole chaotic scene. I can only imagine what the community and what the first responders probably felt like. Holy crap, here comes the third world war. But that's what happens. It's the unexpected. As a first responder, you don't know. You only hear when people call the 911 dispatch and like, hey, listen, we have ABC going on, send B, E, and F. You understand what I'm saying? Like, send them quick. And that's what they do. Don't get me wrong. I can only applaud the quick response to both incidents in DC and in Philadelphia, getting there super quick. There are times where, again, you're going to see horrible things in your first responder careers, whether police, again, EMS or fire. And don't ever feel ashamed, or don't ever feel like, oh, this dude's a punk, or he or she can't handle this situation. No, don't ever feel like you don't have somebody to talk to, because you can actually go and get help. Don't ever be ashamed of going to get help because you have a problem of what you saw. That's what counselors are there for, right? They're crisis team intervention counselors, right? You have an issue, you talk to your commanding officer and you say, hey, sir or ma'am, yesterday's event, I'm shook. Is there anybody you can talk to? And the thing is that you don't have to be ashamed, because nobody is supposed to know what you're doing, because that's a HIPAA violation. You're not supposed to tell somebody what was wrong with you because of that. Yeah, your coworkers are going to be like, oh, where's so-and-so? I didn't come to work today. I wasn't feeling well. That's all. But if there's something, do not keep that inside, is what I'm trying to say. Do not hold that in your don't hold it in your brain, and don't keep it with you like luggage, because you never know if that stuff builds up and you just, you don't want to tolerate it anymore. Make sure you ask for help. Don't go to a bar and have a couple of brewskis over it and you'll forget about it, because that's not the way it happens. Some of, I shouldn't say I don't do it anymore, but still, there were some points in time that I didn't even want to come home and tell my wife what I just saw, because not that she wouldn't understand, but every time I left that door, whether volunteer or career, it's the same. You don't know you don't know what's next. And I don't want her to worry about me. You know what I'm saying? And I know that you all think the same thing. You don't want your loved ones to worry about you, but you try to do the best you can, right? That's all you can do, is do the best you can. So again, seek help if you need it. Don't be somebody and keep that on the back burner of your brain and never seek for counseling or something like that, because there's nothing wrong with that. There's not that. You're human. You're human, right? We can go on and we can talk about life-saving stuff and all this forever, but it's sad to say that this is a continuation. You're going to see fires, and you're going to see shootings, and you're going to see car accidents, and you're going to see train crashes and all types of stuff. You just gotta, you gotta do what you keep doing, because people need you, right? You got to be in that right frame of mind and keep yourself somewhat physically fit, right? And be smart and train and do all the stuff. You can only train so much, because again, the scenario is not the same. It's totally different, but at least you're prepared for what can come next, right? I think you guys do a fantastic job. I think some of you that live in a small town or a small village, you should contribute to your local volunteer fire department or EMS because they need people, right? I would want it, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but I'm saying like if you're physically fit and you're able to do it, do it. I did, right? It doesn't pay anything, but guess what? You learn things, especially EMS. You learn how to save people, and if it happens in your own home, you're probably able to save your dog or your little brother, your little sister, or your husband, or your kids, or your grandmother, grandfather, anybody, your friend, right? Your next door neighbor. It's there. It's a useful tool, right? So again, seek help if you need it. Don't be ashamed. You're human. People that have again local fire departments and EMS, join your local departments, right? Don't give back to your community. Your community's been given to you, for a while. So I hope I didn't make anyone sad. I hope I didn't disrespect anyone. I hope that you take this with some kind of knowledge of what people go through, especially first responders. And again, I want to send my condolences to all those who lost their lives in these two accidents, and those that are still recovering. I wish you well. I wish you a speedy recovery. And I think that's my time. I usually go like 18, 19 minutes. I'm at 21, 22 right now. So that's a record. All right. Well, I hope you're all safe. Be well. I'm Big C. Peace.